Morning, Barry.
Morning.
How are we, sir?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Jolly good. Thanks for joining me again today.
No worries.
So in the first video, we talked about some key tips for the candidate to consider when about to undertake a virtual interview. So this video is very much looking at it from the high risk perspective. So looking into some key tips for designing and delivering an effective virtual interview. Also to explore some of the key challenges that hirees will face. But also I'm keen to get your views on the future and whether virtual interviews are here to stay and really some key benefits that hirees can expect to experience through the use of video technology. So let's get into it. First of all, what are the most important things for the hirer to consider when designing a virtual interview?
There's a number of things. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still interviewing somebody, so there's still the same considerations, but I think it's a lot more labor intensive at the front end. So for me, it's very much about sort of preparation, practice, rehearsal, really, because this is unusual, sort of uncommon for many people. And you really need to make sure that you're representing your organization as best as possible. So it needs to be slick, it needs to work. So if you think about the process itself, make sure that it's fit for purpose, make sure it's testing the right things that you're wanting to test. I bang on to many of my sort of clients about it, because often people just get blinded by all the various different options that you can have and think, well, just do all of that. If you're not going to have, if somebody's not going to be customer facing or having to do lots of presentations in their day-to-day job, don't ask them to do presentations. That's not going to test the right skills. Then when you understand what it is that you're wanting to do in the process, then think about the tech. Don't do it the other way around. Don't try and fit your process into your tech. So, for example, if you're going to do a panel interview, if it's only one or two people, then Microsoft Teams works. After you get over sort of 4 people, which can happen, and a fair bit, especially if you're maybe doing some kind of networking type role, then Zoom is probably better. Reason for that is you can only fit 4 people into the screen at any one time, and you want to make sure you're keeping that engagement. The other bit is practice it. It's not the same as sitting in front, sitting next to somebody and you can sort of bounce off each other. Make sure that you know who's playing what role, who's asking what questions, because what you don't want is those periods of silence in between, which will then break that rapport. And there's a bit for me around making sure you're giving your interviewee the best possible chance. So make sure that you're sending them some information on kind of what your expectations are, what's going to happen, but do it in with plenty of time. I've just had a situation last week where they sent through the links to the interview that day of the interview. Right. So people are then having to rush and download something. They're not able to practice. They're not able to check and they needed to do a 10-minute presentation. They weren't able to check whether they could share it or how they were going to work it. You've got to give people the best chance. So I would say as much notice as possible you can give is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when interviewing for sort of cultural fit, because the conversations we're having tend to link back to that. The assessing the technical competence is one thing, but making sure you're getting the right cultural fit is another, and arguably harder to assess. What examples of good practice have you seen in some of the recruitment campaigns you've been involved with where they've done that effectively?
As an absolute minimum, you need to, as the interviewer, need to take control of the interview at the beginning. Set out your parameters, set out what's going to happen, who's going to play what role, and also acknowledge the fact that maybe this is unfamiliar for people. But one of the sort of ideas is having almost like a coffee room option sort of before. So a meeting, whether it's with HR, just to go, right, this is what's going to happen. It's out of the interview process, and then they introduce you, whether that's with HR or if it's through a recruitment organization, maybe the recruiter can sort of facilitate that. It just gives somebody it's essentially playing the role of the reception area. So it's just giving you a bit of a softer entrance into an interview. You can get yourself into the zone. You're starting to get used to talking to a screen rather than people and whatnot. It's showing acknowledgement that the interviewers or the organization cares about the person's sort of, who is interviewing. So I think that's a really interesting sort of way. Equally, another one which a client had done is had sent with the interview confirmation a little video from either the chief exec or somebody that they'd be reporting into to explain what's going to happen in the interview, what they're looking for and whatnot.
Yeah, there's been 2 campaigns recently which did 2 different things, but both quite effective. One was the organisation asked for a 3-minute video to be submitted to talk about themselves, to try and get across their personality, talk about their personal values and talk about the values of the organisation that resonate with them, so that it's purely at the front end, the cultural, the team fit assessment. So when you get into the interview, you whittle down the numbers to a manageable number so that you can spend more time on the technical side. And another organisation we've worked with recently wanted to split, and this is for more senior key permanent hires, but split the process into 2. So have a more informal 30-minute coffee chat where you're doing more of the, what motivates you, what are your values, what is it about the organisation that resonates with you, and then split that up into the more technical side. So I think organisations are seeing the difference between face-to-face and virtual, and the bits that are harder to draw out. But it does seem to be that cultural bit that everyone sort of links back to as harder.
Yeah.
When you think about the future, Barry, and the conversations you're having with your clients, do you think video interviews are here to stay? And why is that? What are the benefits that hirers can experience?
The short answer is yes, I do. I don't think they will be relied on as heavily or to facilitate the whole process. But I think from a permanent recruitment perspective, I think it will form part of that SIFT process, whether that's at the beginning of the process or towards the end of the process. From an interim perspective, I think they'll probably play a much more important role. So the beauty of videoing interviewing is you don't have the commute, you don't have to arrange, you don't have to reserve a meeting room and try and find one in the building or whatever. If you see a candidate that you like, you can go, right, okay, are they available later on today, in an hour? You probably want to give somebody a bit more notice, but even the following day, that person, that they'd be able to sort of, you can diarise an hour into your diary, and then you've got them, you're not missing them. And let's be honest, I think looking into the future, there's going to be, certainly from the interim market, I think it's going to really pick up to try and catch up on what we've sort of missed out on, and getting the best talent. You're going to need to move quickly. If you drag your heels, other people are going to snap them up. So I think absolutely it's going to be really important.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Barry. I think there's some really good points in there. We have produced a good practice guide for clients, which can be found on our website. But if you're looking for a bit more specific advice on things like this, then you know where Mr. Forsyth is. Check him out on LinkedIn or Twitter. But thanks very much for watching, and thanks, Barry, for your time today, sir.
Thank you.